Welcome to today's episode of Bible Question and Answers with EvangNanaArkoh. Today's episode talks about Nephilims. This subject came up after our video on the book of Enoch, where we received countless messages asking us to delve into that subject so the truth about them can come up. And so today we take a look at their origins. Where did they come from? What is the word Nephilims? Where do we find them in the Bible? The word Nephilims can be found in only the modern translations of the Bible, and is found in two Bible texts, Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 and Numbers chapter 13 verse 33. Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. The Nephilims were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. And Numbers chapter 13 verse 33 says, "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." These are the only places where you would find the word Nephilim. And so follow me closely as we delve into this subject. Before we do, if you are new to this channel, remember to subscribe to it, like the video, share so other people would come to the truth of all Bible questions. After reading these two Bible texts, two things stand out. From Numbers chapter 13 verse 33, we find that these people were tall. And so the spies from the camp of the Israelites saw themselves as grasshoppers. And so imagine, what would make someone see himself as a grasshopper in front of another person? Like I said in my first video concerning Bible translations, we do not use just one Bible translations if we want to understand something in the Bible. And so we would use the Good News Translation and the International Standard Version to understand what Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 is saying. If Numbers chapter 13 verse 33 is throwing more light in terms of their height, we can just use Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 based on that and then explore to find out the meanings. And so now the word Nephilim in here means that they were tall. So we go down to use other Bible translations like I said in my very first video. If you click on the icon on the top left corner, scroll down to the last video, and you would find there Bible translations and how to use them, which one is the most accurate. And so we use the Good News Translation and the International Standard Version for Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. So from the Good News it says, "In those days and even later, there were giants on the earth who were the descendants of human women and the heavenly beings. They were the great heroes and famous men of long ago." This translation replaces Nephilims with giants, like Numbers chapter 13 verse 33 in that same ESV sought to explain. And so yes, we understand that Nephilims mean giants. And what about the heavenly beings in here? The ESV used sons of God, and the Good News says heavenly beings. The ESV used daughters of men, and the Good News uses descendants of human women. So now something is becoming quite clear. We have found the meaning of Nephilim stated explicitly here as giants, and then we have seen sons of God defined as heavenly beings and daughters of men, descendants of human women. What does the ISV also say? The Nephilim were on the earth at that time and also immediately afterwards, when those divine beings were having sexual relations with those human women who gave birth to children for them. These children became the heroes and legendary figures of ancient times. And so the ISV also brings in another explanation. That is when the ESV says came into, it means having sexual relations. And so the ISV is also bringing more light to it, but it maintained the heavenly beings and human women. If you did watch the video like I asked you to do, you would find out that I usually use the King James Version for all my videos. And so we would go into the King James Version to see what it also says. It reads, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." And so we find that the King James neither uses the word Nephilims, heavenly beings, or human women. So yes, I could have concluded the video right here, but that would not bring out any explanation. That would only be comparing of scriptures, but that is not what we are here to do. We are here to find out the truth about the Nephilims. We are going to use the pointers to determine what it means. First, we're supposed to find Nephilims, but the Bible translations have explained it. The next thing we look at is the phrase the sons of God. There are three schools of thought on who the sons of God are, and they all based on the Bible to give out their conclusions. The very first one is that the sons of God are angels. The second one is the sons of God are the representatives of unfallen worlds. And the third one is that the sons of God can mean human beings. So which of the sons of God should we take? Is it angels? Are they representatives of unfallen worlds, or just human men? Follow me closely as we take a look into that. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do, and also like the video as we go along. If you have any question on any part of the video, you can highlight the timestamp with your question and I would come back to answer them. If you go through my old videos, you realize that for every question or contribution that is asked, we all dive into it to find a place to put it. So the method we are going to use is the cancellation or elimination method. We start from the angels being sons of God, and this position comes about after reading the book of Enoch chapter 6 verse 1 and 2 and Enoch chapter 7 verse 1 and 2, which says that fallen angels came down and married human women. And so we would use the Bible to see if that is a viable position to stand. We go to Job chapter 1 verse 6 and Job chapter 38 verse 7. Job chapter 1 verse 6 says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." We already know from the creation of Lucifer, the devil, that he is an angel. So if he's an angel and he came among the sons of God, then perhaps these sons of God are angels, like the book of Enoch rightly said. We go to Job chapter 38 verse 7 again, and it reads, "When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." The context for Job chapter 38 is God giving answers to Job. After the long passage from Job 1, God is finally giving him answers, and he's telling him about what happened in creation. After creation, the whole heavenly host, that is the morning stars and the sons of God, clapped for joy. So who are the sons of God? Now, if the sons of God are angels, then if we are to move on, we would understand that angels would be able to procreate. Angels are supposed to be flesh and blood because DNA is important in this context. Now we go to representatives of unfallen worlds. That is our second position. That position is taken from Job chapter 1 verse 6 and verse 7. Verse 6 reads, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." So this text is saying that truly there was a meeting of the sons of God and Satan was there. So the location of the meeting will determine who these sons of God are. Verse 7 says, "And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it." And so the venue for this meeting was not on the earth, or else the devil would have replied that he is on the earth and the meeting is taking place here, but rather he came from going to and fro on the earth. The phrase "from going to and fro on the earth" is used in Genesis chapter 13, where God told Abraham that this is the land I'm going to give you. From verse 14 it says, "And the Lord said unto Abram," after that Lot was separated from him, "Lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered." Verse 17 says, "Arise, walk through the land, in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it to thee." And so that means that that land, if you walk through it, it becomes your possession. There are lots of languages like this, and so it is not surprising that in Luke chapter 3 verse 37 and 38, Adam is seen as the son of God. So Luke chapter 3 verse 37 says, "Which was the son of Methuselah, which was the son of Enoch, which was the son of Jared, which was the son of Malaleel, which was the son of Cainan, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God." And so what is the meaning of son of God? In this context, it says that Adam is the son of God. You go back to the Genesis creation story. It says that I am creating man and let him have dominion over everything. This position about the sons of God being representatives of unfallen world seem to take seed, but then where do we find the unfallen world? 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 9 gives the idea of unfallen worlds by saying, "For I think that God has set forth as the apostles last, as it were appointed to death. For we are made a spectacle unto the world, and to angels, and to men." That Greek word spectacle used here is the word theatron, which means place in a theater. And so in the days of Paul, it would mean place in an amphitheater. And what at that time, when we talk about being in an amphitheater, you would have people around watching. They can cheer you on. You might at times not hear because of how focused you are to remain alive. Sometimes you fight with lions, other times with your fellow men who are gladiators. And so in order to stay alive, you would have to be there. And the citizens or the people in the amphitheater do not come into the theater to help you. They are just observing. And that is what Paul is saying. This idea of representatives of unfallen world seems to take seed, because if you read Job 38 verse 7 we read, it places two distinctions: morning stars and the sons of God. So it looks as though they are two different ones and not the same beings. Now, before we go to the third position, that the sons of God are men, let us take a look at the Hebrew word sons of God. It comes from the word Bene or Ben Elohim. Ben Elohim. And the meaning of Ben Elohim is son or one born of supreme God. So that is the Hebrew. When you go to the Greek, we have two words for it, which are teknos theos and uios theos. And the meaning of these are a child, daughter, son, offspring, children of God, Godhead, and the only true God. And so for all the Bible verses we find in the New Testament, it uses any of these when it's talking about the sons of God. So we would have to find them. There are some that allude to son of God but translated as children of God. All these are part, but we'll take a look at the main ones that use the phrase sons of God to determine the final position, and the conclusion will be drawn on this matter. The very first text we'll take a look at is Matthew chapter 5 verse 9. In the Beatitudes, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And that word there can be replaced with the sons of God. And we understand that the Beatitude was referring to human beings. And so human beings can also be called the sons of God. We go again to John chapter 1 verse 12, which reads, "But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." In this case, if you receive Jesus Christ, you become a son of God. Not only receive it, but believe it also. Let's look at it again in Romans chapter 8 verse 14. It says, "For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God." So this is adding more to it, that it is not only about receiving. If you receive, you have to believe. And if you believe, you should be led by the Spirit. And that is when you can be called a son of God. Romans 8 again verse 19 says that, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God." This is in the same chapter, referring to the human beings who have received Christ and are led by the Spirit. Philippians chapter 2 verse 15 buttresses the point about the sons of God by saying, "That ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world," telling us that human beings can be called the sons of God, even though we have seen that representatives of unfallen world are also called sons of God. Now let's see 1 John also buttressing the point again, that sons of God can refer to human beings. In 1 John chapter 3 verse 1 and 2 it reads, "Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not." This is telling us that we were not sons of God, but we have now become sons of God. How true is this? Galatians chapter 4 verse 5 and 6 says that, "To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God has sent forth his Spirit, his Son, into your heart, crying, Abba, Father." Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. Telling us that we were not sons of God, even though Adam was a son of God, as said by Luke chapter 3. But we lost sonship after Adam lost dominion and gave that power to the devil. And so we lost that right to be called sons of God. So Christ had to come and reinstate us into that position by adopting us and snatching us from the devil. How true is it that the devil was a representative? He was, because Christ didn't refute his claim in that mount of temptation when he said, all the glory of the world has been delivered unto him, and he gives it to whoever he wills. Again, Jesus called him the prince of the world. Paul also calls him in Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12, the prince of darkness. And so yes, the devil became the representative, and we have been snatched from him and reinstated as the sons of God. And so we have seen from this that man can be also a son of God. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 6 is the final straw to break the back of the camel that sons of God mean men. Verse 6 says, I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the world, even everyone that is called by my name, for I have created him for my glory. I have formed him, yea, I have made him. We have seen Jesus call men sons of God. We have seen Paul say the same thing. We have seen the genealogy say the same thing. And we have seen God himself talking through the prophet Isaiah. And so yes, all these three positions are stated. Now it is time for elimination. It looks as though this final position cannot be eliminated, and the second position, that is representatives of unfallen worlds, cannot be eliminated. And so the most viable elimination would be angels as sons of God. And so after seeing this, we understand that based on the context, we would use any of these words. And so if it is talking about human beings and he used the sons of God, we are not supposed to say it refers to the representatives of unfallen world. We are to put in human beings. And so like Job 38, he cannot put in human beings because it is talking about creation. We cannot put in human beings. It is talking about creation of the foundation of the world. So human beings. And so like Job 38 would tell us, we cannot put in human beings because it would not fit there, since it is talking about creation. And if you come down to the Beatitudes, you cannot put in representatives of the unfallen world because it is talking about humans. And so yes, that word can be used interchangeably, but we should be mindful of the context. So now we go back to read Genesis chapter 6, and then we can eliminate the one which is not viable, which is Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which are of old, men of renown. So yes, for one to be able to give birth, the DNA should match. The DNA should fit. Do angels have the same DNA as men? We read from Psalm 104 verse 4, which says, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire. And so if we need to have a DNA that will fit, there should be some form of flesh. But some says that the angels are flames or spirits, which do not match. Let's see Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 also stated, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And then right after that, it gives explanation of what it means. It says, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Which is to say that all these powers are not flesh and blood. Now, when it comes to the sonship, let's see what God himself said in Hebrews chapter 1 verse 4 and 5, which says, being made so much better than the angels, as he hath by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they. For unto which of the angels said he at any time, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. And again I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. Verse 7 says, and of the angels he said, who maketh his angels spirit, and his ministers a flame of fire. To tell you that no, angels cannot be called sons of God. Let's read again in verse 14 of Hebrews 1, which says, are they not all ministering spirits, sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of the salvation? What more do we need to understand this? That angels are spirits and not flesh and blood, and so their DNA cannot match with human women. We read from Jesus' own lips in Mark chapter 12 verse 24 and 25. The context to this is that the Sadducees asked Jesus about a woman who married 7 men because they all could not give birth with her. And so, like tradition said, the brothers had to take turns in marrying her so they could give an offspring in the name of their first brother. But that did not happen. And so they asked Jesus, verse 23, in the resurrection therefore, when they shall arise, whose wife shall she be of them? For the 7 had her to wife. And look at Jesus' response to them. And Jesus answered unto them, do ye not therefore err, because ye know not the scriptures, neither the power of God. 25. For when they shall arise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of heaven. It means angels do not marry. Angels do not marry. Let's see that again in Luke chapter 20 verse 36. It is the same story, but Luke uses the word in a different context. It says, neither can they die any more, for they are equal unto the angels, and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. And the Greek word used here can be changed with the sons of God, telling us that, but they would be sons of God, and so they will not marry. And so from this, we can see that the school of thought that says the sons of God are angels should be eliminated. And so now we only have 2 viable school of thoughts. So which one fits into the context of the Genesis story and the Nephilim so well? Let us go back and read that text again, Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. This is the case we have. We have taken out one explanation. Now we only have 2 left. We have to go back to 2 preceding chapters to understand this. In chapter 4 verse 16, we find Cain leaving his parents to form his own city. It reads, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. I did a video on the meaning of this text and the wife Cain had. If you haven't watched it, click on the button up here and scroll down to the truth about Cain. Watch it and you will understand this context very well, that Cain moved away from his parents, far away from them, and he went, had children, and built his own city. And his lineage is dictated clearly in that chapter 4. You go down to verse 26 and it switches and says, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Now, before we even jump into chapter 5, we have seen another key here, that men began to call on the name of the Lord. So this would make us understand who the people of Seth are. We go to Joel chapter 2, which says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. So calling on the name of the Lord is linked to deliverance. Let's see that same text reference in Acts chapter 2 verse 21, which says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So if in the genealogy of Cain there was murder, in the genealogy of Cain there was taking of multiple wives, which was not so from the beginning, then we can understand why the people of Seth began to call on the name of the Lord, because each successive generation led to the degradation in moral values, and so whoever is of God will call for deliverance. Let's go again to Romans chapter 10 verse 13. Romans chapter 10 verse 13 says, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. You go up 2 verses and it's talking about believing in God. You come down 1 verse, that is in verse 14, and it's talking about hearing of the word of God and believing it. Whereas John chapter 1 verse 12 has told us that if you believe and receive God, then you are a son of God. And so what is the meaning of this text here? Let us go back and put that text in perspective and context again of all the verses we have read. Genesis chapter 4 verse 26. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. So if you are to replace that men began to call upon the name of the Lord, we would say, and he called his name Enos, and they were the sons of God. If we are to replace that long expression by these three words, the sons of God. And so in chapter 5, we find the genealogy of the sons of God. In other words, the men who began to call on the name of the Lord, all the way down to Noah. And so when we come to verse 6 and we find the sons of God having sexual relations with the daughters of men, then it would simply mean that the sons of God, who are the descendants of Seth, and the daughters of men are the descendants of Cain. The Bible also says that, let your light so shine forth among men. Then the question will become, are we not men also? We are men. But once you are saved, you receive a higher status of a son of God, and so you have to lead your fellow men to Christ. And so that is what this text is talking about. So what is my conclusion? I conclude by saying that the sons of God in this context who gave birth to the Nephilims are the two extremes of the descendants of Adam, Cain and his people, and Seth and his people. Why were they able to give birth to giants? It's like taking a donkey and a horse. They would give birth to a mule, which is bigger than a donkey, because of what we call gene vitality. And so that is what was happening in here. These two people stayed wide apart, and so when these two crossed, their genes were so strong, so much that the people they gave birth to were tall. And then I posed these two questions. After that, we would understand why my position is clear on this. We read in Numbers 13:33 that Nephilims were the descendants of Anak. And you go down to 1 Samuel chapter 17, it says Goliath was a descendant of Anak, who are giants. So was God's plan a failed one? Because read Genesis chapter 6 from verse 5 downwards, it tells you that repented God that he created men because of that unholy communion between the sons of God and the daughters of men, which resulted in sin, which resulted in a lot of bloodshed. And so God destroyed the world. So the question is, did God's plan fail? Since after the flood, descendants of Anak were still giants. And then we come to this modern day. What about the basketball players? Are they also Nephilims? Are their parents also angels or fallen beings with their mothers being women? Or perhaps their mothers are fallen beings and their fathers are humans? No disrespect to Shaquille O'Neal, no disrespect to Michael Jordan, but these men are giants. These men can be said to be Nephilim because the word Nephilim is from the Hebrew Nephil, which means giant. And so are these fallen beings? Certainly not. Their parents are humans. And so I put a conclusion to this, that the Bible holds no contradiction, and the Bible does not give us the idea that these fallen beings or angels came in onto our women, but rather our men saw our women and had sexual intercourse with them. If you have any contribution or comment about this video, as usual, leave them in the comment section and we would interact with ourselves to get to a conclusion like we always do. Remember to like the video and share across so people will get to see the truth about the Nephilims. See you next time.